This morning's Police and Fire Commission meeting. We will start off with a roll call this morning.
Pinker?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes.
Schutz?
Yes.
Pinkerton is absent.
Yes. Public comment and correspondence. No public comments, so we'll move on to staff updates.
I don't have any at this time.
I just got a couple. One, the Marshfield Training Center master plan. Currently, we received the final draft on that. We're going through that at a city staff level, and we're going to work with SEH on how to present that. As part of that overall process is for them to come in and do a presentation of the plan. So we'll see what's going to work best there. We talked with City Administrator Steve Barr the other day, and hopefully we'll have a plan for possibly in April, possibly in May. So somewhere in the future, we'll have that taken care of. And then the last one, CIP update. We're completing our CIP process. We'll be presenting that at the April meeting. So we're getting everything put together. We'll have a good comprehensive plan for you. That's all I have for updates.
Okay. Approval of minutes of the February 12th, 2026 regular meeting.
I move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. No changes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. It's approved. Approval of police department bills.
Thank you. Good morning. In your packets, there's 3 sets of bills, still wrapping up last year's. 2 of them are signed by Commissioner Pinker back on February 25th. The other one, which was actually pretty thick, was signed by Commissioner Meek yesterday. When I reviewed the bills, I didn't see anything that stood out to me, but I'd be happy to answer any questions before the approval.
Any questions or comments, or need a motion, please?
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Pinker?
Yes.
Meek?
Aye.
Schutz?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes. Approval of fire department bills.
Thank you. I had a couple of different ones that I wanted to bring up before we get started. We had 2 sets of bills. One was done by Commissioner Hanson on February 25th, and one by Commissioner Bushman yesterday, March 11th. If you look on page 7G, you're going to see the live fire inspector registration. That's part of our comprehensive training plan. Under NFPA 1403, we have to have the live fire instructor training to do any kind of live fire in a structure. So if we were to acquire a structure and then burn that structure and do training in it, we need to make sure we got that certification. Deputy Chief Backus was kind enough to attend that. He's also an instructor at Mid-State Technical College. Plus we had 2 other instructors that went through that at that time. So in total, we have 4 instructors. Our goal is to actually grow that as time goes on over the next year. The second one I had was page 7H, 7I. You're going to see the Northwest Training Wisconsin Training Seminar. It's for the WSFI, which is the Wisconsin State Fire Inspectors Association. That one is for our inspectors to get more knowledge on how to do the fire inspections. If you recall, we've had a couple different issues that have come up over time with a couple of the businesses, and this really helps them to become grounded and understand the overall fundamentals of the fire inspection world. It's a completely different discipline than firefighting, and understanding how to interact with the public too. They do a lot of that there, and kind of helps to bring all that together. Overall, those were the items I saw that needed clarification. I guess I would be happy to answer any questions you have. Yeah.
On 7F and 7B, I noticed just 6 lazy boy recliners.
Correct.
I'm thinking that you got 2 for 1 price, the sale, based on the price that
I believe
is
that
there.
should have been 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2 for the price of 1, but it looks like there's 6 total.
Oh, no, it could have been just 2. I apologize if that's in there. That's part of our replacement policy on an annual basis.
It's broke out into 3 budgets. That's
Oh, that's why. Yep.
Did you get them 2 for the price of 1 like they advertise?
We typically don't. We try to get the best deal we can. We actually want to try to find 3 different spots and get the best price we possibly
They
can.
buy them like tires. They get 3, buy 3 and get 1.
Yeah, I was thinking for the amount that's spent on what looks like only 2, I'm thinking Wow, that was a great deal.
Yeah, well, we try to maximize the dollar wherever we can. So. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over on page 7H up at the top, we have another plumbing bill. I
Correct.
have not seen a lot of these major plumbing bills in past years. What is going on?
Well, I think you got a combination of a couple of things. We've got, the station is 15 or 16 years old now, it's actually 16. Some of this is a culmination over time. What we found is that was actually for the front plumbing line that went in the front from the 2 bathrooms up here. Down in the bottom in the basement, they actually had a T that was in there. What ended up happening, it wasn't allowing everything to be guided down the pipe the way it needs to. So it was being basically jammed into the pipe and it was preloading, I guess is the best way to say that. And we got some camera visuals that the plumber was willing to show me, not to show that it was corrected. So I think overall, I think we've come to a point where we've actually got that taken care of. I feel bad for Lori. She's had to suffer through most of that. There's a lot of smell that comes out of that when you're doing it. And she's been a trooper and made sure she made it through all of that. So we've had some unique situations, but I think we're to the point where we've actually found a solution for that problem. Last year, we actually replaced a couple toilets up front to have the larger gallons to flush. That didn't necessarily work either because we just didn't have the right flow. So we think we have everything guided in the right direction and it's all going downhill, so that's good.
So what we really have is a design flaw that caught up with us.
I believe so. Yeah, that's kind of what the plumbing professionals came up with. So I think we're there. We hope.
Is there any preventative maintenance schedule for those? Like come in once a year and wash it, check the lines?
We do on a couple of them. We have one upstairs where we actually have the grease trap that's aligned with that. Somehow every year that seems to get clogged up. We do have them come in and jet wash that at least once a year, and then we'll have them probably drop a camera there in the next couple of years just to make sure everything's going where it's supposed to. So.
Any other questions or comments? Get a motion, please?
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second, roll call?
Pinker?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes.
Schutz?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes. Police Department activities, training reports, and correspondence.
Sure. In your packets, there's a list of our activities that we've been involved with this last month. Everything seems pretty self-explanatory to me, but I'm happy to further explain anything before they're placed on file.
On February 13th, it was lethality assessment program training. What is that?
Lab training is it's correlation with domestic violence. So we've been doing lab for a while, and they call this lab 2.0. They've upgraded the training a little bit. So we work in conjunction with Personal Development Center. They're coming in and doing training with all of our shifts. And what this is intimate partners if they meet certain criteria, have a higher percentage of killing their victim.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is we are teaching our officers how to ask the questions to try to get that information, hopefully prevent a tragedy and ahead of time.
We also try to link them with the PDC advocate at the same time too.
And then how is the job function test validation?
We've been working really hard on that. Actually, we've been connected with Tracy Toffner, and also been in connection with HR and both of our attorneys, labor attorneys, and also HAP, to make sure that we're getting everything together. I was going to have a staff update next month. I hope to have a little bit more information at that time for you, and we're plugging away at it.
Then I got one more item, which is kind of related on the fringes of body-worn camera video release and redaction. 9 days ago, there was an incident in Florida. 2 officers responded to a domestic situation. Gentleman came out of the house, talked to the officers, went back in, came out, fired shots. One officer got shot in the leg, and they had recently changed the positions of their Axon cameras from here to the shoulder. The officer got hit in the axon. The bullet ricocheted into the other shoulder, and the axon survived.
Wow.
The corporation is going to try to reclaim the video from there, but just by changing the position.
A lot of times those policies are driven by our officers blocking the camera during critical incidents. So if we have the camera here and we're having the gun out, then our hands are in the way of that camera. So a lot of times those are driven by those purposes, but I would bet that officer is happy that policy was passed. So
Yes. And the press conference, let's put it this way, the sheriff was beyond ecstatic.
I bet.
Any other questions or comments for Chief? Okay, thanks, Jody. Approve proposed budget resolution 2026, release of all funds for fire department. What?
You jumped ahead, sorry.
Did I?
Number 9.
Oh my gosh, I did.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna roll with it.
My bad. Okay, approve the hiring of 1 police officer immediately and recommend approval to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee.
Thank you.
I even turned right to the page.
Okay. In your packets is a memo explaining that our department is currently working 2 officers short. Our 2 officers down in the patrol division and actually 1 officer in the detective bureau. We have 1 officer who is deployed with the military, and we have 2 other vacancies. We are approved to fill 1 of those vacancies, where we were approved rather back in November. We're currently in the process of finalizing that hiring. We did hit some hurdles in our hiring process and had to switch up our candidates for a little bit. So that one's taken longer than what we hoped for, but I think we're on a good track right now to fill that position. The other vacancy was created by a resignation in February. That individual will still be on the payroll up until the middle of May. Since the vacant positions that we have been unfilled for nearly a quarter of a year, and the officer who's deployed is not drawn from our budget for the same amount of time, we have incurred a savings of about $37,000. That graph is in your packets. We have a potential candidate at this time, actually two potential candidates at this time, both of whom are currently attending the police academy, and according to our contract, if they're in the academy, we can hire them and we pay them at 80% of our starting wage of pay. The projections that you have in your packet, those figures are assuming that both would take full salary benefits. It would be unlikely in this case, but of course we never really know until we make that offer. We did contact Jordan in Finance, who helped us verify that we do have the funds available and that the savings that we incurred for this first nearly quarter of a year is more than enough to take on the additional cost and run out the time to when the other officer is off of the pay schedule. I believe it would be advantageous to hire the second officer now because, first of all, the field is extremely competitive. The individuals in our academies that are not hired today will almost indefinitely be hired by the time that they graduate. So they're leaving for interviews constantly. So we are in a very competitive field, which is good in some ways, but we've been working short with which causes challenges to meet our minimum staffing requirements, and also does incur some overtime. That overtime cost doesn't negate the cost of a new officer, but it does wear out our personnel and it makes it hard to fill additional shifts. We do need to fill our patrol division before we can promote to our detective. So our detectives are working short. They have been working short for a while. They continue to keep up with it, but it's just a matter of time before they start to back up on that. Additionally, if you remember, we passed the restructure. We're not able to promote a detective sergeant until we fill the detective position. So we're backlogged a little bit. My hope is that we can get our patrol ranks up so we can promote a detective and then ultimately a detective sergeant. So this would be one step to do it. I believe that we have the funds to do it, and I think that it's the right decision to do it this time. So I'm asking for your approval to hire another officer so that I can approach the finance, budget, personnel, and ultimately common council to do so.
Well, I move to recommend we move forward with the chief's recommendation on hiring.
I'll second it.
I have something that I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. The short staffing, how does that exactly affect your staff?
We've got minimum staffing requirements in our patrol division. So we're saying that we don't want to work under 4 in a CO. So with the shifts being short, our normal, I guess I should back up. Normal times we're able to have 2 people off on a shift at one time. With short staffing, it drops down to 1. There's some that have already pre-approved vacations and things, which requires us to have overtime to bring people from the other shifts in to work. So those officers are working more. They're getting paid overtime for it, obviously, but they're working more often, and that starts to burn out our officers. So just to fill the normal shifts becomes somewhat challenging, but then when you add on other requirements like our traffic grants that we only got a couple, but that would be one incident, or any other special event that needs to be filled, or any of those other things that come up, those also become challenging to fill because there's more people working more overtime, and so they're not signing up for those voluntary coverage. That's one way that affects us. When we work short overtime, it always negatively affects our officers and our department because we need to staff those shifts.
We also have to send 40 officers to 24 hours of training every single year, and for us to send people to training usually means that that person's gone or multiple people are gone at any given time, so we can't use them for staffing purposes, and we have to backfill those shifts as well. So that's becoming a little bit problematic. We're trying to send a number of people to instructor certifications to continue our training in-house, and those trainings only come up so often, and it usually requires at least a week of somebody being gone, if not more, to get certified. And so those are some of the areas that are starting to be affected.
And then when we send officers to training, that officer at training doesn't incur overtime because we're able to switch their times, which means that they, instead of paying them overtime to attend the training, which they're working more hours during that training time than they normally would, they're using that overtime to take days off within a 28-day period so it doesn't incur overtime. If staffing is short and they're not able to take those days off without dropping below minimum staffing, then we have to pay them overtime to make up for that. So there's a lot of ways that this affects our department by working short.
Okay. Well, I just,
It's a fair question.
For public's sake too, I mean, being specific about it is important so that people understand the reason for it, because, well, it's really hard to work when there's less people around and we have to work harder. It just isn't enough. So I appreciate you going into it deeper for me and being more specific.
There's a couple more things, Chris. One's family medical leave that's uncontrollable. I'm sure there's at least one person possibly every year, if not more, that take family medical leave, or a workman's comp injury, or some other thing that just comes up, and it could be days or it could be months that this person's off, coupled with training new officers takes a great period of time to get them out on solo patrol to be able to do the job on their own.
It's just sometimes when you don't have enough people, you gotta work a little harder, and it's okay if it's a little stressful for a little while. So, and I get all that. I understand that. So, my only concern is the immediately part. Just want to make sure that, and I know you guys have your process and how you go through and vet everybody to make sure that they're qualified for the job. I just want to make sure that we're not just hurrying up and hiring somebody just to get a body in the door.
No, and again, I'll remind that we were approved back in November to hire,
Right.
and that is exactly the reason why we don't have that position filled today, is because I will not just fill a seat. we're gonna do our best to have the best officers we can. So that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
Another question, how far out are we reaching in terms of recruitment, or are we staying pretty close to NCTI and Midstate?
There's, we advertise on WileyNet. We get more applicants from North Central Tech and Midstate Tech primarily because we have officers teaching there. And we're able to build those relationships, and those schools are attracting candidates that are closer to this area. So they want to work here. We advertise on WileyNet, which is statewide, and that's where all the departments who have openings advertise. So it's well known that if you're looking for a job as a police officer, you would go to that site. We advertise just within state for the most part, because when we reach outside the state, they'd have to do a reciprocity, which can be challenging, and it's not very attractive for a lot of people to have to go through another different recruit school in order to work it here. So we have better luck to stay in state.
Any other questions for Chief? We have a motion and a second. We need a roll call, please.
Pinker,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fire department activities, training reports, and correspondence.
We've got a few items I'd just like to talk about. There was one wildland firefighter training. All three shifts partook in that wildland firefighter training. That's a broader scope of that. We actually looked at our overall training and realized that there's been some times since we actually had the basic class for wildland firefighter training. In addition to that, that was part of our grant program that the DNR would offer that training to us for the UTV, which you'll see a little bit later on in this. We are hoping in the future that we can give more advanced classes. This was just that basic baseline class. And then again, next year, we're hoping to go for a more advanced piece to continue to add to that educational training. The other one was aircraft emergencies. All three shifts partook in this one. As you know, we're starting to get a little bit larger aircraft at the facility down there at the airport. That kind of becomes a concern for us. Our wildland firefighting and aircraft emergencies are kind of a different world, because wildland firefighting, it's a lot different than structural firefighting in the fact that it actually creates its own weather patterns, does all of its own things. When you get into aircraft emergencies, again, you have large amounts of fuel. We've got to use Class B foam. I really wanted to revisit that as a staff and make sure everybody had that baseline so that we can continue to build on that for the future also with some advanced classes. The last item I had was collective bargaining. We have started our collective bargaining. We had our first meeting on 2/25/2026. There's been offers. I guess I'd remind you that Commissioner Gershman is part of that and has been part of the process overall. So that's up and going. Right now at this point, we're just at the initial offers. There's not much more to offer. Other than that, everything else seemed to be fairly normal throughout the month. A lot of busy training. I commend our staff every single day for the amount of stuff that they do. Just making everything come together in the overall plan. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
On that wildfire training, is that being done because we have a wildland urban interface, or is that being done because we're a backup for the rural departments?
I would say it's dual purpose. If you look in the city, we've got a lot of areas that have kind of a wildland urban interface. We've got areas that are kind of more wildland. If you were to get up by the school, in the back of the school system where the high school is, a lot of that is all wildland. That's in city property. If you were to go over on the north side, kind of where Berg Equipment is over in that area, the Viaduct Bar, that area is all urban interface. And then we've got certain pockets throughout the community. If that were to take off and get into some of the residential areas, that's where a bigger concern is for us. So it helps us here. The other part is it kind of helps us to be more unified in the overall system. Again, trying to strengthen our all outside mutual aid partners. And again, if we give mutual aid, they're also going to be able to come in with their equipment and help us with that fire as well. So we're kind of a part to try to make sure that we're filling that need. And I do see it as being a need in the community, especially with some of the things that are happening in the weather patterns lately.
So then, this pretty much is the standard training that would come out of the basic model from the wildfire coordinating group.
That's correct.
Okay. Then, February 5, Lieutenant Wolf at doing something with Flashpoint. What is the Flashpoint event?
Flashpoint event is actually what we used to call the Citizens Fire Academy.
Oh,
I tasked it to the community risk reduction group or the fire prevention group. And what they did is they came up with a little bit different model. In the past, we've done it over a 6 day. It was 6 days over a 6 week period, so 1 day a week. What they did is they modeled it into a 1 day because we were finding no one had the time to commit to those 6 days. So if they could do it in a 1 day pattern, we were hoping that we'd have a little bit more interaction with the public and try to get something that we could do just in a 1 day format.
Okay. Then on February 12, Deputy Chief Barnes conducted a above ceiling check on the sprinkler system with Apex at Health in Motion. My question there is Apex a testing system or is that Apex Engineering out of Eau Claire?
Apex is basically a sprinkler contractor. That's just their name. So it's an Apex company. I don't think it's an abbreviation for anything. I believe it's just what the company name is. So.
Okay. Then this was on the 17th. TC Energy liaison. Who is TC Energy?
That was a webinar that involved anybody that has any kind of TC Energy actually has some of the pipelines on the south side of this town here.
Okay.
So they have a big webinar of stuff that's coming up, changes. It's just a kind of a training thing for the emergency management side, stuff like that, in case something would happen, who to contact, what to do, and like that. So it was about a 2-hour webinar on what their plans are if something would happen and what they expect out of us. Kind of question back and forth of what they're going to get from us and stuff like that.
And I got 2 more items here. One, I think we should just give a shout out to firefighter Conrad for all the work she does for the Stepping Out program. I have heard so many good things about her.
Absolutely. She goes above and beyond every day to make sure that program is coming together. She coordinates with ADRC, coordinates with a few other groups in the community. One of the big ones you saw this last year was Mugs for Rugs. That's where basically they'll bring in their rugs that are in the house. They exchange those rugs for a coffee cup and a coupon, and they can go have coffee with some friends. Kind of a nice way to possibly take some rugs out. That's the number one fall. When you get into falls prevention, that's the number one reason why people fall in the home. And once they fall one time, they typically don't go back home. So our goal is to stop that from happening and make sure they can stay at home as long as possible.
And the second item, I think Deputy Chief Barnes deserves a small plaque. He appeared 18 times in the activity. This may be a record.
And he rates the activity report.
I would say everybody here at the department is active. Some months we have more activity, but this last month, like you said, Deputy Barnes did quite a few things as far as getting active in the community and fire prevention. So always active in that role. We've got people out every single day. Again, I think we do something around, 2,200 fire inspections a year that we inspect. So that's a lot of fire inspections that are done just outside of our regular call volume. So I think that says a lot for that.
I just got one thing. Can you kind of touch on the Lexipol grant writer?
Yes. Lexipol grant writers, we took that on last year, and that's going to be something we'll have in the next, probably next meeting. We're utilizing them. They can write 2 major grants for us. These are the fire prevention and safety grants. These are AFG grants, which is assistance to firefighter grants, the fire prevention and safety grant, and then also the SAFER grant, which is the assistance of firefighters for the community. Those are the big ones that come from the federal government. They can also help us in an unlimited resource to basically look at all of any of our grant language we want to put out there. They'll look at that, they'll help us craft it, and they really don't charge us for that piece of it. It's just the major grants where they have to charge on it. Right now, we're working on a fire prevention and safety grant. As you know, this year we have a fire and staffing study that's actually in our budget for about $38,000. We're actually looking to go ahead and utilize that money as a grant match, and then hopefully not have to maximize or use all of that money. We're hoping to go ahead and span some of that out, still get the station and staffing study, but then do a full community risk reduction, which is gonna give us a 5, 10, and 15-year plan. If that one goes through and it's accepted, that would also allow us to open up for future grants and future grant areas. Meaning if we find something in senior, if they notice that there's a problem in our senior housing development areas where possibly there's cooking fires and they find that to be an area, we can write a grant later on to try to curb that and help prevent those type of fires. So it's a bigger, broader plan, and this was a big part of that Lexipol grant writer, was to bring them on board and help us through that vast, I don't know if you've ever seen one of the fire prevention and safety grants, but they're very extensive. They go into all of our call volume, they go into everything that we have in our community. So they help us to bring all that narrative together. And again, some of them are actually sitting on panels where they understand what that grant language should look like and what the grant writers or the people that are reviewing the grants, what information they're looking for in those. So it's been a help for us. We've met with them probably every month. We've been meeting with them on a monthly basis and really trying to cover our fire prevention and safety grant right now. And they've also been we've been able to reach out with multiple different things at that time too. So that's kind of the broader part. That's kind of the scope for the future and trying to bring more federal dollars back to the community, along with helping us with other grants that might be able to bring money to the community as well.
Excellent. Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on 11. Thank you. Approve proposed budget resolution 2026, release of all funds for the fire department UTV project for the purposes of purchasing a UTV, and recommend the finance, budget, and personnel committee approve proposed budget resolution.
All right, so that gets to me. As you remember back about this time last year, we kind of brought it to attention that we're going to start looking for a UTV and trailer and everything for our urban wildlife interface, along with adding EMS capabilities on that unit. Since then, I put a lot of grants in, did a lot of legwork of donations and everything. As we went through, I applied for a grant for the DNR. We did successfully receive that grant for the DNR, which you guys in the city approved back in September. Moved forward with that. That was only granted for the skids portion of it, not the UTV itself. So we did have the skid built. That's at S&R truck right now. It is completed. We're just basically waiting for the invoice so I can turn all that in. Did a DNR, they come up after it's been approved. They approved that skid, then they will cut us a check for half that cost of that skid, that $5,000 out of that. That'll once again go back into this fund for the UTV. But basically what we're looking for is throughout the year, we received many different grants. Right at the end of December of last year, we received a very significant grant donation toward us from a foundation in the area. And that pushed us over the limit. That basically now I've got all the funding. It was all in a donation fund for that specific project to get the skid, pay for the UTV, and pay for a trailer and everything to haul it in case we did have to go out in the rurals. We can take it out there, build the whole entire unit out. Now we just need the approval from you guys because it is a vehicle and a high cost project. Basically moving that money from the one account into an account that's accessible so we can turn around, start, finish the bidding process out, and then go ahead and start purchasing everything. The skid has already been approved. That's been budgeted and everything. Once we get the invoice, that can be paid right away. But then we want to get the UTV and all that and start getting that moving forward. I'd like to, kind of the whole time frame is get approved for you guys to move forward with the whole process. Chief Mueller will be going to the finance and budget meeting next week to get approval through them. That's where they'll get the numbers and all that for the budget resolution. Then all that paperwork will be in the DNR. They'll come up eventually, evaluate the skid, get us that money approval, and then we'll go ahead, once I get back the following week, the end of the month here, then I'll move forward with putting out the bids that I've got, because I got 3 trailer bids right now. We've got all the different UTV bids. We've got one that's giving us a very good price on it. That's probably what we'll be going with, but once we get that process through, then I'll go through the finance budget for final approval of the purchasing, common council and all that stuff. But I'm hopeful that we can have this completed before the end of April and have this ready for the spring wildland season. So just need your guys' approval to keep moving forward for the budget resolution and to start the purchasing process of all the equipment that we've got waiting.
I move to approve the budget resolution.
Second that.
Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just had one thing. Overall, this was a $55,000 project that was actually in the CIP for next year. I think the big one to say is we fully funded this through grants. We funded this through the other part, which kind of speaks to the electrical policy too, with the electrical grant writers. That's our goal for a lot of the projects in the future. And I think this really just showcases that. It shows the community support as well. Just the strength of the community and how people want to get involved in good projects. And I think this project was well laid out. Brian did an excellent job of going through and finding the funding that was needed. And I think this is going to answer that need we have. This is not only for fire protection or as far as fire prevention in the wildland. This is going to be utilized in all of our major events too. Maple Fall Fest, you're going to use it at Hub City Days. We're also going to be at Dairy Fest. You know, it can be used at any one of those conjunction because it does have the EMS component on there. And it also has a small fire pump on it. So if there was a small fire, hopefully we'd get to that, knock it out right away before it grows into something that's much bigger in the downtown area during Hub City Days. So a lot of different things it can be utilized for. It's not just a wildland fire interface vehicle. It can be utilized in many different aspects of the community. But again, I'd just like to commend Brian on the work that he's done on this project and bringing this all together. So good news is the funding's there. We just need to transfer it from the donation account to the expenditure account.
We have a motion. Did we have a second?
No.
Okay. Roll call.
Baker.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes.
Schutz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes. Approved the MOA for emergency medical transport of injured law enforcement canines.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So a little bit of backstory. Several years ago, I went through some training and learned that there really wasn't a mechanism in the state of Wisconsin for transporting canine officers. The state really hasn't tackled it since then. In the last couple of years, we've really been looking hard at trying to get something together and seeing what other agencies are doing as well. 2 years ago, I attended some canine first aid training at one of our EMS conferences. Last year, we also had 2 other members attend that same training. And then just in December, all 3 of us were able to attend the advanced canine training along with Officer Fox, which was really beneficial. I actually got to go to Appleton and work with cadaver dogs to do some advanced medical training, which was extremely eye-opening as far as what we can do in the field with these canine officers. So along with that, and you guys will have seen more on that in the future as well, by the way. But along with that, the way most EMS agencies are handling transport of canine officers is actually just with a memorandum of agreement internally. So I wrote one up. I did submit it to Hap, the city attorney. He did review it, did not have any issues with it. I think the only thing he added to it was some additional signature lines. So if we wanted to do this agreement with, say, Marathon County and their canine officers, or Wood County and their officers, we could also do that. Really just looking for your guys' approval to sign the memorandum of agreement, move it forward so that the proper city staff can also sign it, and represented officials. I should add, sorry, all the information I had on this, I probably didn't cover the very basics. This would allow us to really just transport a canine officer in an ambulance. That's the bottom line. We would transport with the canine handler and go to the nearest, I believe it's Mosinee, the nearest approved vet, if we ever had the need to. But yeah, it's just so we can transport in the ambulances.
Now, when you say Mosinee is the only approved vet, Is there some law enforcement standards board, division of health, some sort of law enforcement standard that says we have to transport there rather than to one of our?
Well, this is, it's actually in Kronewitter, it's an emergency animal, a veterinarian. So it's just, that's one that's gonna be open that we're gonna be able to take to.
Okay.
It's just
Essentially,
different than
it's a canine ER, it's the closest one we have.
Okay. If for some reason we don't have a medical unit available for transport, are we gonna transport in a police vehicle?
If practical, yeah.
Okay.
The benefit of using an ambulance to do this is that we've got one of our paramedics, preferably myself or one of the other two, has been trained in doing canine care, along with the handler in the back working with the canine officer. So a lot more room to work, a lot better atmosphere to work than trying to do it in the back of a squad car.
And Steve, I think it needs to be mentioned that this does not supersede human life. You know, this is not something that we would do. You know, obviously would take the dog over a human.
Is there any additional equipment that the ambulance would need for that?
So I know the canine handlers do have some medical equipment, first aid. We have, and Commissioner Pecker pointed out Jenna Conrad, one of our firefighters, she's very much involved in this as well. She is working on putting together some canine care kits. We're looking at building 2 of them. I guess you could say is one of the benefits of there's less regulation for canines. We can actually use some of our expired equipment that we couldn't use on people for treatment of canines, such as our EasyIO needles, which we drill into a bone to give medications, fluids. Those do expire. We can't use them on people anymore, but they're perfectly good for using on canines. So yeah, there will be some additional equipment. We're looking at building up 2 kits that we can grab if needed and put into any of the ambulances.
Got one more question, and this is about care of the canine. I know we've got Malinois. Others departments may have German Shepherds.
We've actually got a mix.
Yes, okay. If we had a bloodhound, if we had a dog like Reggie that strictly drugs, and there's the size difference, is there any difference in the care? Is there anything that we have to have special, if that was the case?
Based on the advanced training we went through in December, no. The training that we went through would cover anywhere from because some of the cadaver dogs we worked with were smaller dogs.
Okay.
It's the same techniques.
Okay.
So has there been any incidents in the past where, you know, you guys have had to run a dog to Kronewitter in a situation?
Yeah, I think we ran a dog to Kronewitter one time for an injury they got at home, but the canine officer just brought it up there. But we haven't had an incident, thank God, that we've had to do this yet. But other communities have, obviously.
Sure. And so, okay, we put the dog in the ambulance. And we're working on the dog. We take it to Kronewitter. The materials and the needles and the things that you're using, how is that all going to get billed between the departments, and how is that all? I mean, are we just providing that service for nothing, and it's just helping each other out?
I guess my plan was, yeah, this is interdepartmental cooperation. Be no different than taking care of one of our officers if they were injured on scene.
Okay.
Yeah, my priority is taking care of them, and I guess we could work out details later.
I think the bigger scope is this is a city asset. I mean, there's.
I get that. I just want to lay out any costs that could be associated with this so that it's all kind of out and transparent.
And some of the costs, again, we're using some expired things that we would normally just throw away. So there definitely is a cost savings there as well.
Sure. Okay.
Now, once we approve this, what do you think the possibility is of Sean or Chad signing on to this?
I think high. I haven't talked to them specifically about it, but as an administrator, I mean, we put a lot of money into these dogs,
Yeah.
and they are one of us, you know, and I think that they would, I would be very surprised if they would be supportive or willing to participate.
So does Rapids or Pointer Wausau have anything like this with their canines?
I don't know.
Because, you know, we do support for other departments around the area, and, you know, if for whatever reason, if one of our dogs ends up in their jurisdiction, do they have something where they could help us out?
I don't know specifically, but when I've talked with other chiefs, they've never mentioned anything like this. This is the first that I've actually heard of it.
Okay, so this might actually snowball something into another community.
I hope it does, because just like you said, we do, our canines especially work with other jurisdictions on a frequent and regular basis. They build strong bonds, and so when DC Everest needs a search of their school, we're up there. And they're down here when we search ours, or we help with jail searches and all of these things. We work a lot together, so there's a good possibility that other jurisdictions would, that we'd beat other jurisdictions, and actually it just occurred to me that we should reach out to an MOU with our canine training teams, because we work together quite a bit, and they could be here. They may want to sign on this so we can treat their animals, so.
When you look at the canine training team, that would be us, Wood County, Marathon County, individual agencies, Clark County.
Ours, trying to think of all the ones, we've been most with Marathon County, when Everest was there, now they're with Mountain Bay. Wood County does participate with us sometimes they go on their own. Adams County used to be with us quite a bit, I'm not sure if they still are. It changes a little bit from year to year, but we've got a core group of central Wisconsin agencies that climb on with us, so.
One thing that maybe could be utilized with another MOUA, I think I'm saying that right, is like a leapfrog approach to taking the dogs to a medical facility with other departments. Like if we reach an agreement with Marathon County, we can maybe meet them somewhere in between, bring up our local ambulance, and then they can take the dog the rest of the way. Obviously, we'd have the handler with the dog, no problem.
Yeah, we're in the beginning stages of this to see, like you said, this would snowball. But I think that we're, the fire department, especially Deputy Chief Bakels, has put us into a lane where we could really make this thing happen.
If this thing works, and we get this set rock solid, let's get this out into not just the local press, but if we can get a journal article someplace to highlight what a small community is doing, it'd be much to our benefit, just like with the UTV. Now, Brian's mentioned that that's going to be what, trade shows, at least a limited number of trade shows. That's something else we should get into. For instance, Firehouse. Fire chief isn't published anymore, but they're online. To get that out there, show the innovation that we're taking for the small department. You want a motion on this?
I'll motion to approve.
I'll make the second on that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. No other comments, we will take a roll call.
Pinker,
Yes.
me,
Yes.
Schutz,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Direct city staff to solicit bids for the fire station fire alarm replacement project.
That's me. So the fire alarm system has reached its end of life. We have to exchange out all the smoke heads and all the different small portions of the alarm system along with the alarm panel. So this is basically keeping you guys in the loop that we're going to start soliciting next week. Josh Morris has been working with me on this. They're going to start soliciting for bids next week. They'll be opening up, they'll be advertising for bids on March 24th and March 31st. They'll be putting in the local paper and all that as required by state statutes and all that. The bids, once they're received, we'll be opening those bids April 14th to see who got the low bid. for the alarm system itself. And then after that, it basically get approval through the finance budget and then the common council and all that for approval of the bid so they can start to work on it. Basically what this will be doing will be exchanging out all the smoke alarm heads, all the heat alarm heads that we got in the station, the enunciator panels on each, down in the first floor and the second floor, also the alarm panel upstairs. So they'll be utilizing the strobes and horns that are still in here, all the electrical wiring, unless they find something wrong with it while they're in there working on it and replace it. It's more like an updated maintenance request is what's going out. So the wiring conduit, all that's gonna stay the same and everything, just basically change out the heads. The biggest portion of this that we're pushing for is that this will be non-proprietary. Currently, when they built the fire station, the company came in, it's all proprietary, so it's a lot more expensive for them just to walk through the door, and you have to buy that specific stuff exactly from them. We can't go to a different vendor to replace a bad head, you know. Where we go non-proprietary, these guys come in, we can order anything from any company, anybody can come in and work on the system and operate it as long as they're licensed to do so, saving the city a bunch of money in the long run in the end. So basically we're keeping you guys updated on that, letting you know that we're gonna start soliciting these funds for the bids for this, and then hopefully the whole process goes through. By May, we'll have everything settled, work will start, with the requirement that they have to be finished before the end of August. So, and then we'll have the whole new system, and then that'll be extend out, you know, for the next 15 plus years. So we gotta do it again.
Just add a little bit more to that too. This is in the capital improvement program for 2026. There was, I believe, 50,000, am I correct in that project?
Yeah, like 50-some thousand.
So this project would be fully funded through the capital improvement program.
Questions? Okay, thanks, Brian. Review and approval of fire department policies and procedures. It doesn't say that I need them. That was informational, right? You don't have to approve it.
That's information, just keeping you in the loop on the CIP, and then just knowing that we're going to use the procurement rules for public works projects.
Okay, review and approval of fire department policies and procedures.
All right, just kind of leading out, this is part of the bigger project that we've been working on. The good news is we are coming to the end of it. I think we've got the vast majority completed. We got a little bit more that we need to do. I think when I talked to Relief was going to take us the last time, we've got approximately 22 policies that are still laying out there. There may be some additional policies in the future as we see needed, or there may be review in the future. The policies you see in front of you are the residency requirement. If we look at the residency requirement, this actually reflects the contract that we have now. This is actually laid out in the contract, CD8, and what this does is we basically made that a 45-mile radius, and it really, if you were to look at that policy in the manual, it takes out all the cities that were in there. We had to call it the cities the last time because it was a 30-mile, and then it just touched on those cities, so we had to call each one of those cities out. Now it's just a 45-mile radius. It cleans up the language and allows us to do what we've already been practicing by allowing people to live in the city of Warsaw, or the city of Stevens Point, Rothschild, Weston, or Rib Mountain. So we removed that language, put the 45-mile distance on there. In the additional part, we went back and we looked through our some of the review that we did for staff, being management staff. When we looked at that review of the video, at that time the PFC had directed to allow, basically for management staff, there would be no residency requirement. And it was based off in the police department at that time. So that was what was laid out there. Then we reflected that in this policy as well. So that would be the update that would be in there. Most of the management staff here actually live within the city or within the immediate radius, so that's not really a concern. But as we move forward, that might be a consideration if someone lives over in Wausau or lives in another area, they may not take a management position because they don't want to move. So I think it kind of broadens that horizon and it allows them to still have the ability to have a person. Firefighter health and safety survival training, basically just going over, and we just kind of extended this over our other points, but really just the health, safety and survival training. I believe this was reviewed by Mr. Penker. And then family support liaison, kind of laying out the family support, what we need to do to have someone to take care of a situation in the event that so if we have to activate that person, it lays out the foundation behind that piece. So it's all laid out in there. And then the last policy was a guide to interpersonal skills, how to basically, it's a guide. And it frames it up so that we can actually our interpersonal skills within the fire department and how we talk with each other. Overall, those are the policies that we had for this month. Just going to give you a high level on those pieces. I'd gladly answer any questions.
We have another handout, the news media community relations policy.
That one's going to come up a little bit later on once we get into the public information piece. So I did put that policy out there. I'll be working off the framework of that when we talk about the PIO position.
Thank you.
The only concern that I would have, this is on 1038. I realize that we can assign a public information officer when needed.
Mm-hmm.
But we now have this stated as Department of Public Information Officer. I realize that's going to move into our next discussion. Do we have people that are being trained in the public information area?
We have had training in the past. We've been working with the police department to really come up with some new training for all of for their officers, for our officers on this side, so that we do have that put back in place. That's going to kind of set the tone for the future. Do I think we've got it completely covered? No, I think if you had a designated position for that, to really work on those things throughout the year, I think that's going to be a little bit better for us. But right now, we do have a framework that we can work within.
Okay. Training is difficult to find in that area. And maybe it's because we're looking in emergency service, resources, but I did reach out to the instructors that ran the academy that I went to, and we can get some training for law enforcement, but it's specific to law enforcement. The FBI won't train non-law enforcement, so it's difficult to find something that we could have for both of our departments. We're going to continue to look with the idea, we've been talking about this for a while, with the idea of having hosting a training so that a number of our department and the number of the fire department can come, and then we can offer it out to the neighboring departments if we don't have enough to run the class, so that we can hopefully find specific training for both of our departments. To date, though, we haven't been able to find that instructor or that instruction available, but we'll continue to look.
Bill, if I can add to that real quick.
Yeah.
Several of us, I don't remember how many, but it was a pretty good chunk of the department went through the full 40-hour PIO class several years ago. And then just more recently, a few years ago, there was a one-day training class held in Pittsville that I believe myself and I think it was retired Chief Owen also attended. So as the trainings do pop up, they are rare, but as they pop up, we do send personnel.
Just to add a little bit more to that, the framework that we have in place right now is something that we could activate in the event of a major emergency. I think one thing that's really important to kind of frame here is that work needs to be done throughout the year, because a lot of that is starting to work with reporters, starting to develop relationships. So that relationship development is what's going to lead you to a good outcome the day that an emergency actually happens, because you've already got the relationships built, you've already got the ability to talk with someone, and typically they're going to be able to approach you a little bit more. You're still going to get, if it's a major incident, you're still going to get a lot of major news outlets that are going to come in, and that's where we really want to be proactive in that approach, because they're going to be after their story no matter how you get it. And they're going to go and they're going to basically go into kind of an attack mode, and we want to make sure that we're able to kind of steer that, and we can do that probably through the other news agencies and help to kind of walk down that road. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next conversation. I don't want to get too far into that piece, but I think right now we have a framework which we can work within if we get it. So I think it's ideal. I think we need more work in that area.
Okay, I need, any other discussion? I need a motion in a second, please.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion in a second, roll call.
Tinker,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes. Preliminary discussion about our press conference and public information abilities. Kind of touched on this a little bit here.
And I can leave that out. Just keep it.
Yeah, why don't you give us an explanation?
I really appreciate the question. I want to state that out clearly. I mean, this has been part of our broader plan. If you look at the strategic plan, we've actually called out that position, being a position that should almost be by itself. We've looked at trying to combine that, so we have not only a non-emergency component, but an emergency component. Both of the work actually collides or actually comes together. But if you look at community risk reduction, that's getting out in the community and working with all of the people within the community with CPR, other things. At the same time, they're going to be working on stories, so they're already going to be developing those relationships because they're going to be working with the news media. So these two really combine well for us at our department because now they can start to really look at that long-term goal throughout the year of really developing those relationships while also administering the community risk reduction that we know we need in our community. So if we look at that, I'm going to break those down by questions. Last time, Mr. Painter had a couple questions. Question one was, how prepared are we? I think what we have is we have the framework. If you look at the policy that I handed out, which is policy 320, it covers the PIO designation, the process of disseminating information, what is restricted information, how to handle media inquiries, media access briefings and special tours, and also news releases, and the last one, how to conduct a news conference. So it kind of leads us down that road. It gives us that framework from which we can work with. And I think that's going to be the first step, and that's almost like phase one in a sense. As we build out later on, we can build on that. Question two was, do we have an actual procedure? And again, we have policy 320 in place, and we don't have a specific procedure for the press conference, but it's actually outlined in the procedure itself. So it's kind of one part in it, it's a section in that policy. Who should be at the press conference and where should it be conducted? When it comes to these, it's going to be really selected. If it's at the school and there's an active situation going on there, it's probably not going to be at school, it's probably going to be at City Hall because we're going to want to host it away from the event. Really, the situation is going to dictate where that happens. I think in my mind, where it really should go a lot of the time is probably at City Hall. That's a general spot, general location. We can set up things there where people can actually do that and conduct those. But it would be a pre-scheduled event if you look at our policy. That's how we would pre-schedule that. The intention would be to highlight newsworthy events, special events, or if a department member wants to make an appearance. So in the event that we have, I guess like a special event for us here at the fire department is when we do our batch biddings. That's almost like a news event. If we were to do something where we're going to highlight one of these, like the UTV when it comes, or we're going to showcase what we're doing with the canines, I think that's something where both departments can get behind and we can highlight those cases. I think having the PIO position would allow us to really present that in a really straightforward conversation. They can align that, they can take the time. Right now, what ends up happening is it becomes a collateral duty. So when it's a collateral duty, you're basically putting everything else on the shelf for a second or two. You're taking a little bit of time and putting into this. Whereas if we had somebody that could truly look at this and actually build that out the way it needs to be done, we can make sure we had really strategic planning and really a focus on where we want to go with that conversation, making sure we've got good highlighted information there. I think this also highlights when the fire chief determines purpose and scope, and it could be dictated by an event in the community. News releases, it covers that. It'll be completed prior to the conference with date, time, and location of that press conference. And then it may reference other official dignitaries or agencies that may be in attendance. So if a commissioner wanted to be there, if Madam Mayor wanted to be there, whatever event would happen, we could highlight those things within that press conference so that they know who the dignitaries will be. Sometimes you'll also get where a dignitary from the state of Wisconsin wants to be there, or even, I think it was in Weston, not that long ago, they actually had the vice president over there. So there's a lot of different events, and a lot of that needs to be thought through, and this PIO can really build that piece out. For the PIO, they should prepare news releases and or prepared statements. It kind of lays that out in there. And they will plan for the site and provide escorts as necessary. So if we need to take someone through a site and show them something, they can do the escort or at least get the right people there. If it happens to be something that's going to be highlighting a fire prevention activity, maybe Deputy Chief Barnes would be the person that would actually do the escort, but the PIO would align that position and make sure that's set up. They'll provide opening remarks and introductions, and will assist with any Q&A at the conclusion of whatever story it may be. So they could probably craft some of the language we need on those and make sure they've done some research on those particular areas. That would help us to craft that for the future. It also kind of dictates who needs to attend. So the fire chief or designee will determine who needs to attend. That policy lays that out in there. It also says that department members will be notified prior to the news conference if they need to attend. So if there's anybody that would need to be in attendance, the fire chief will basically work with the PIO, and that notice will be sent out to everybody. In our uniform, or in our policy, it actually lays it out that you'll be in a Class A uniform. So, you know, I mean, in a major news situation, I believe that would be the right uniform to have. We want to make sure we're official in nature. Overall, that's kind of what the fire department is doing currently. As you know, in our long distance strategic plan, we would like to develop a position that works underneath the fire prevention office as a community risk reduction and public information officer. Community risk reduction being basically their non-emergency role, and the public information officer being their emergency role. That's how we'd like to kind of work on that. But that's a long term. I guess at this point, I would turn it over to the PD to maybe highlight anything that they're doing.
In our area, you probably have noticed that press conferences are very rare. There's not very often that you see a police chief or a fire chief holding a press conference. You'll see press releases, things that we post on maybe our social media or other local outlets, but very rarely do we see press conferences. I think that's probably a good thing, because most of the time the press conferences are related to some pretty intense situations. So I don't know where we're going to stand, where we go away from the press release and go into a press conference. But I think conversations like this is probably important to have ahead of time, because you might have seen some press conferences that really turn into a circus. There's too many people there. It's not organized. There's no structure to it, and it just ends up making your community look really, really terrible. In my opinion, the people that are present at a press conference should be dictated by the event. And we always kind of migrate to an active shooter situation. So say it's at a school, for an example, then I think that you would have probably the police, maybe an administrator from the school, and I would probably keep it to just about that. Police administration and school administration, maybe fire administration, or if they responded, obviously they would have responded, so possibly fire. I would structure it in a way that we lead with a synopsis of what happened. That synopsis is going to be built by trying to predict what questions would be asked. We try to get all of that into our synopsis of what happened. I think that we would then say what we're going to do next, what the community can do, and that might be to stay away. It might be to pray. And then finally, we're going to do some thank yous on whoever responded, and then say when we're going to have the next press conference and how to get that information, and open it up to a limited number of questions, either a limited number of questions or a limited number of time for questions. And I think that structure seems to be one that when I've seen it, and it seems to work the best. We don't want to make this an election thing. You know, we don't want to make this where we might have some politicians that want to attach to this so that they get their names out. We really want to control it and I guess give the credit to the victims and the responders who respond to these instances. So I guess that's where we are as a department. We don't have a lot of formal. Ours is no different than, and maybe a little less than what the fire department has as far as a structure to a press conference. I don't think we have, I know we don't have a policy that tells us how we have to do press releases. Our policy is more giving guidelines on who and what information can be released and at what time. We don't have any PIO mentioned in our policy because we don't have that position. So we would have to build that if we go that direction.
I would just add that PIO is in our strategic plan as well, so that's something that we recognize that we do want in the future, and we've even talked about trying to share a person as a PIO between the two departments if possible, and similarly to their community risk reduction, potentially a large percentage of that PIO's job within the police department would be similar to that. And as many of you know, we have a pretty large social media following, so a lot of their non-emergent duties, excuse me, would surround that area as well, just to stay up to date and keeping people informed and community engagements and things like that. So
my thought is that it's not that a want for either of our departments. I think it's a direction that our professions are going. People don't receive information the way they did even 5 years ago. It's getting to be to where we need to be creative in how we get information out. And some of that is relating to safety. If we have to tell people that they have to stay away from a certain area because we have an incident or a fire, in the old days, we could call the news media and just say, hey, stay away from this area. Now we go on social media and get that out, and we could use geofencing, and we can use, alerts on phones. And there's all these other ways that we can leverage to get pertinent information out quickly. So I think the direction that our departments need to work towards is leveraging those technologies to get information out.
I would highlight that too, as saying that takes time, and unfortunately that's a critical part where we need to identify that as actually being a time slot that's needed within the departments. And I think that's something we've tried to forecast out. But if you don't have eyes on that, it kind of becomes a collateral duty. And when it becomes a collateral duty, we know what collateral duties do, and they end up getting shelved a lot of the time. And honestly, I think we really need to look at the actual function of the department and quit acting like it's a collateral duty, because when it's a collateral duty, again, you're just not going to have eyes on it. And again, this will come up once a year at one of these meetings, and once a year within our department. We'll do some training on it, and then it gets shelved back on the shelf again.
Or worse yet, when the incident happens, we're trying to scramble to get it
right to work. I think we really need to be intentional on what we're doing here, as far as what we're going to do in this area. I really do feel like on your side, I think you guys have had a public safety officer that's been out in the community. For us, we've never really had that role. We've kind of taken on in collateral duties for the community risk reduction approach. But if we can alleviate an emergency before it ever happens, through prevention, if we can teach CPR and that person gets hands-on CPR immediately, when somebody goes down, we know when blood's going to the brain. In the first few minutes, we know that we have a much better resuscitation effort. If we can get out and actually stop a fire happening in an elderly housing unit before it ever happens, by just putting some different systems in place, that's where community risk reduction applies with this position. It really helps us to really mitigate that for the future. So in my opinion, I believe that there would be, well, that's not even an opinion, I think this is based off from a lot of the information out there that really shows us that we should have something in community risk reduction. And if we can pair it with this, I think that's just the better plan overall.
Since I brought it up last meeting, I'll start. I went through, did some research, so I came up, I haven't counted the pages, but I came up with this much. And what I did is I simply summarized the major points. And this was from multiple sources. One source was from the University of Kansas, from their communication department. And then there were two other sources. And this is simply a summary of what they were saying. And it follows pretty much what you guys were saying. The one thing that impressed me, what I have labeled as number 2, ACTS acts. Accurate information, concise presentation, timely, and a small number of participants, which is what Jody's been talking about. And that paper that we picked up at the FBI Academy, this came from an retired FBI special agent in charge. This, I think, really sums everything up. And small number of participants is very important. I think if you go back and look at what happened at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, they had a stage full of people, with the exception of the Attorney General for Rhode Island and the police chief who said anything. I mean, he didn't need the head of the Rhode Island State Police with his Sam Brown belt and his hat and everything standing there saying nothing. Venue, Everett mentioned that, City Hall, at sufficient space. We don't have any echoes. We've got video capacity. For the press, all my sources have emphasized, have a sign-in sheet, have it read for the press, have a sign-in sheet, have the names of the speakers on an information sheet, along with a guide to pronunciation. If you look at some of the major press conferences, somebody will come up and, you know, I'm Chief Tom Smith, it's S-M-I-T-H. And they'll spell out their names. Have a moderator, somebody who's actually the manager of the press conference. Even if you have 3 speakers, still have a moderator who tries to control things. Jody mentioned having people appropriate to the incident. We don't need.
One thing about the moderator, if I could just go back a second.
Yeah.
Is that many times with the PIO is your moderator.
Right.
So they're not, you know, some people think the PIO is the one that's going to give the message. They really are the manager of the message given. And what we practiced was the PIO does the synopsis and then opens up to the chief's part of it. The chief would basically say what the department's doing, what the citizens should do, and the thank yous, and then answers the question, and then the PIO stops it at whatever limit is given. If it's 2 questions, if it's 5 minutes, they run that part of it. So I think that structure works pretty good. But sometimes it's confusing when you ask, you know, who should moderate it. So.
And then continuing with some of the stuff I found, of course, have everybody on the same page. Not that we have people contradicting each other. And the last item, appearance and verbal delivery count. If you look good and you sound good, that really helps a lot. If you don't look good, you need your department. On the other page, I simply put this together because all of the sources said, you're doing the conference, have a speaker stand that represents who you are. I believe the PD's got one. Well, does the fire department have one? I don't think we have one that's actually.
We've tried 4.
Yeah.
We're working on it. So.
No, and what was recommended in the stuff I found, you know, have a badge, fire department with a Maltese cross on it, so it identifies who you are. The other thing that was emphasized is have a backdrop. And I just put this together as an example. City of Marshfield, Wisconsin, Police and Fire Commission, Police Department, Fire Department, have a badge, have the Maltese cross. And I know from the Historic Preservation Commission, a backdrop didn't cost very much. So just some things to keep in mind. I really appreciate the preparation that both departments have done. This is critical. And we may never have to use this, hopefully not. But if we have a train coming through that's 9,000 feet long and it's got petroleum tanks and there's a derailment, we got to be prepared. And as far as trains, what are we currently counting? 45 to 50 trains a day. That's a lot of chance for something.
Absolutely.
We could have something out on Veterans Parkway. So there's numbers of opportunities. So again, I thank you for the background that you've done. And this is the case, as we move through this, we simply enlarge in that background. And if something happens, you know, we can take the folder, pull the folder out, we're ready to go.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bill. I'm I'm gonna ask that the next two items get pushed off to next meeting. I've stayed here longer than I said I was going to, and I really want to get to the shop. So if you guys are okay with that,
You read 16 and 17.
items 16 and 17 to the next meeting, and then if you wouldn't mind finishing them up. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
The last item is the law enforcement
I'll call you guys later.
and fire service updates. There are some interesting ones that I'd like to point out. The first three, police officers getting there in front of the fire department. I have three examples of police department rescues. One comes from Ocean County, New Jersey. Officers got on the scene of a fully involved house before the fire department arrives, and there is a gentleman trapped on the second floor. He can't get out. Exact quote, "You gotta jump, buddy." Three officers linked arms and caught this guy as he bailed out of the second floor. That had to have hurt. And the video, it looked like the guy was fairly substantial.
I like Wisconsin though.
Sarasota, Florida. After a rescue, the chief noted, the Sarasota police don't just enforce the law, they save lives. Fully involved house fire, downed utility wires. The officers went in and around the wires, evading a sparking electric panel, and rescued a family. Mamaroneck, New York. This is a community, it's northeast of New York City. They have a fully volunteer fire department. They operate 4 engines, a tower ladder, a tiller, rescue boat, utility truck, and the chief's car. Another fully involved house fire. A family took refuge on the second floor. And as the firefighters were trying to get into the first floor, the officers and bystanders were taking ladders off the trucks, putting those up against the house and rescuing the family. I already mentioned Volusia County. One from Georgia, another squad car, fully marked, lights operating, struck from behind by another vehicle. I had mentioned this, the next one, several months ago. There was a death at the Massachusetts State Police Training Academy during a boxing exercise. That was being investigated both privately and by the Commonwealth attorneys. A supervisor and 3 instructors have been charged with involuntary manslaughter. NYPD, they are on the edge of receiving federal approval to use electronically disabling equipment to take down unauthorized drones over major events. And several reasons were cited. That's the Soccer World Cup, the 25th anniversary of 9/11, and the US 250th birthday. As we saw recently, we had 2 bombers at an event downtown New York. But for large crowds and the possibility of drone.
Did it say how they do that? Or do you electronically disable the drone?
Ask the FAA and NYPD. They apparently have got the equipment. I don't know what it is.
Sounds interesting.
It does.
Qualification.
Then, I have not been able to find out a whole lot of information about what chemical was involved, but there was a trucking company warehouse in Carl Junction, Missouri, which apparently is close to the Kansas border because Kansas departments came over as backup. One of the warehouses that was on fire had, as the chief said, very bad stuff. But 10 firefighters were sent to the hospital because their boots were melting. The original article and the reports that I saw online said it was caustic soda, but I couldn't find any references that would indicate caustic soda would be melting their boots. But anyway, they had to decontaminate 10 firefighters. Then, we had the young ladies here a while back asking about the possibility of having a safe haven baby box. Wisconsin Rapids is going to have one. Father Schaller from St. Peter and Paul was the fundraising chairman. They needed $30,000. They got $30,229. One of the construction companies in Rapids is going to provide in-kind donation with installation. So they will be set to go. Then, you might remember I had mentioned the Fall River, Massachusetts assisted living fire, which was in July. There are investigations still ongoing. OSHA completed theirs. They provided you with a list of the 11 citations OSHA issued to the firm. When you look at what they've got, raises a question, I think, to any observer: what are the local inspectors doing? Both in the health department and the fire department and the building department. All of these things should never have been missed locally. But we look at the fines assigned to the corporation operating the facility, almost $857,000 worth of fines. That's substantial. I have one more item. This I got just yesterday. So I wrote this out by hand. I apologize for not having that typed. There is current legal action against the City of Seattle and AMR, the American Medical Response Private Ambulance Contract. The case arose in Seattle. A 71-year-old female with heart condition and immobile due to intense breathing at 4:18 p.m. And this article, by the way, is from March 8th of this year. 4:18 p.m. called 911. The call was transferred to an AMR nurse line in Texas. She explained she couldn't get out of bed. She was immobile. And the nurse line, which is supposed to evaluate what seemed to be less than critical situations, said that we can have an ambulance there within 3 to 4 hours. 4:26 p.m., second call, and the AMR dispatcher says, we'll get there as soon as we can. That second 911 call was relayed from the fire department to AMR, which has their own dispatch center. And she noted, I can't get to the door. And she said that the firefighters can break the door down if they need to. 4:55, AMR says it'll be 3 to 4 hours. 5:25, AMR says 3 to 4 hours. 8:28 p.m., they still haven't gotten there. At 2:29 a.m., AMR left a voicemail. Of course, she didn't answer. And the voicemail was going to say the ambulance was en route. 6 weeks later, she is found deceased in her apartment. From the information I've got, and this goes out, I think this goes out 16 pages. The fire department apparently handles critical cases. AMR handles all the others. The nurse line was established because of an increased level of low-level calls, as well as frequent flyers. And the nurse line was supposed to assess that. Apparently, that occurs in the surrounding county, which is King County. Apparently works well there. It's not working well in Seattle. Now, the critical part is the city of Seattle no longer tracks the response times from calls that go into that numbers line. Formerly, AMR was at a standard of 11.5 minutes, 90% of the time, and less than or equal to an hour, 90% of the time for more critical calls. So I'm presenting this because it provides obviously a fire service problem, also provides a law enforcement issue with the number of times they were called, raises the question, why was the officer sent to check on the person? So this is going through the courts in Washington right now. Obviously, city of Seattle and the AMR said, there's no problem, we're not at fault. Anyway, continuing the meeting, that was the last item. Do we have any items requested for future discussion? Andy, anything? Steve? No. I have none for future discussion. Gentlemen, anything? That being the case, the meeting is closed. We are adjourned.